something a lot of business owners, we go to pick up office supplies. So let's say I drove from my business to Office Depot. I record the date, I record the address of my business, whether even if it's a home-based business. So that's my starting point. The end point would be the address of Office Depot, and then how many miles, and then the purpose of the trip. I went to buy office supplies for the business. So that's pretty much what you need to do. But here's the thing, you also get to track your round trip, right? So you went to Office Depot for business reasons, but also you get to count the same thing on the way back. So the business purpose of the trip would be returning from office, purchasing office supplies. So imagine, I will say the old school way of doing this was to have a mileage log in your car. People would have a clipboard with rows and columns, and people would sit down, and then, at the end of every trip or right before they depart, they would document this information. And for most of us, we're up and going, and we have these wonderful little computers that we have access to. Now, most of the time we're using the GPS to get to and from places. So of course, naturally, a lot of people are using apps, but I want to mention, so if you're using an app, make sure that you are documenting which of your trips are my business and which one are personal. And the information, like I said, the business purpose of the trip. If you are keeping it by hand, then again, make sure that if you have a mileage log on paper, in a clipboard, in your car, that you're trying to keep up with that information, because every mile could be, it translates to potential deduction, right? So regardless of whether you use the actual method or the standard mileage method. So I saw someone reply, they said that this was their first year. Can you track mileage details in QuickBooks? Okay. There are I believe most versions of QuickBooks come with a built-in mileage tracker. It depends how many vehicles are being used. I don't think that more than one person's vehicle can be tracked using the mileage app that comes with QuickBooks. I believe their mileage app is Mile IQ, is what it's called. So I'll drop it here in the comment, Mile IQ. I'm not sure if that's like one word. And you can, if for anyone who doesn't have QuickBooks, you can also purchase that app independently. So like I said, a lot of folks do like the mileage app in order to do this, but it's not QuickBooks per se, it's the app. So you would have to download QuickBooks onto your phone and then find that feature. But I was mentioning before, no matter what, you want to track the mileage, okay? So if this is your first year in business, you have to track both mileage and actual costs. And I'm going to show you why that is in another slide. But I also wanted to just mention here really quick that every year the IRS publishes what the mileage rate is. The standard mileage rate for business use in 2020. So for those of you who may have documented your miles and you haven't filed your 2020 taxes yet, the mileage rate was 57.5 cents per mile driven. But that went down for 2021. And so it went down to 56 cents. So every year, if you create a spreadsheet or, you don't necessarily have to know this unless you're doing your own taxes. You're a tax professional. Everybody's up to date with this information, but just know every year around December, pretty much they announce it, or at the very beginning of the year, the IRS will publish that. So if you Google, IRS mileage rate, it will come right up. So I wanted to show you guys this. So very important when this is your first year in business is that at the beginning of the tax year, which happens to be the beginning of the calendar year, go ahead and grab your smartphone. This little graphic here that I put together is grab your smartphone and take a picture of the odometer. Okay, you're gonna do that at the beginning of the year, and then you're also gonna do that on December 31st. And if you're wondering why, is because as you track your business and your personal mileage, the percentage can be figured out. So for example, I just put some numbers together. I threw this together very randomly. This is not my personal, use of vehicle. This is just numbers I plugged in. So say this was their first year in business and they tracked all their actual expenses on their vehicle. So every time they got gas, every time they, parking and insurance and everything that's listed there. And let's say for the year, they spent $6,265. That was their actual expenses related to their personal vehicles. But let's say they were very good and diligent at tracking their mileage, and it turns out that they only drove 300 miles out of 1,000 miles out of the whole year. Which, how would you know that if you didn't take a picture of the odometer at the beginning, at the end, right? How many miles you put on your car. So that's the importance of the picture. So in my example, this business owner used a personal vehicle to drive 1,000 miles the entire year, but only 300 of those miles were pertaining to business. Therefore, and I did this for easy math, obviously, they drove the personal vehicle for business use 30% of the time. So if you take 30% of their actual expenses, this is the number that it figured out to. However, if you took the 300 miles and multiplied it by the mileage rate, this had happened in 2020, then this is how much the tax deduction would be, $172.50. In 2021, at 50 cents per mile, it figures to $168. Now, in this example, the actual expense is more favorable. But as you can see, you need to track the mileage anyway. Now, if this is your first year in business and your tax professional calculates all this, they will say, hey, business owner, this is a more favorable. Did I say that? Is this to sound correctly? This is this number is a higher deduction, so it's more favorable than taking just straight mileage. But here's the thing: once you pick one method, you have to stick with it every year. So for the most part, I probably should have figured out a different example, because believe it or not, most of the time, standard mileage rate is more favorable than actual expenses. For the majority of business owners, just taking the flat mileage rate and multiplying that by the number of business miles, it's usually more favorable. So once that is determined your first tax year, your tax professional knows that that's what you're going to have to use every year. And then in the example that you your first year mileage was more favorable, then you don't have to track all of this. Then you just track your mileage only. This is only for your first year. You want to track both to see what ends up being more favorable, right? Because your tax professionals on your side too, right? They want to get you the biggest deduction, right? And so I like to be clear that I don't provide tax services. So please don't take these numbers and say, well, this is what this girl told me. Every case is different. Please discuss this with your tax professional. It's very important. But they can only help you. They can only help you so far if you don't document this information. So as I've mentioned in previous sessions, document, because how else are you going to go back, right? If you don't even know what you spend in gas, are you going to sit there at the end of the year, right before tax season, trying to find receipts everywhere? It gets very chaotic. And again, my number one advice is to have a bank account that you strictly use for business reasons. That way you're not sorting through your personal checking account, trying to figure out, what expenses are related to business, which one are related to personal. Especially like myself, my personal account is joint with my husband. So if he gets fuel, I get fuel for my vehicle. How do I know which vehicle that was? You don't want to do that. You want as much clarity as possible for yourself. I'm letting you know for yourself. And also when you pass on and you collect that information for, be it a bookkeeper, be it a tax professional, anybody, it gets really crazy trying to gather that information when it's all over the place. So this is why it's simpler to just track everything out of one account. What else was I gonna say? Yep, I think that's about it in terms of that. What I did want to mention is, I know you guys have probably heard this over and over again about the bail team, right? So I'm going to touch on a few other topics, just going to touch on them because I am not a lawyer, I am not an insurance agent, and I am not a banker, right? So if you're wondering, well, how could a bookkeeper help me with this, right? So it doesn't have to be a bookkeeper. If you have a virtual assistant, if you have an email address or text, you can send them like, hey, today I drove to such and such place. Let that person help you for accountability. That's one method. most bookkeepers, it's difficult to help a business owner track this because the business owner or their staff is the one using the vehicle. So as your bookkeeper, we don't know that information. Again, unless you track it. If you track it on paper, you could always hire a VA or a bookkeeper to translate that into Excel or a table. If you're using an app, again, it's a matter of keeping up with it. I also wanted to mention, if you have employees, if you are not a single member LLC, and so you're an S corp and you are on payroll yourself, the business owner, or you have other employees on staff, you need something called an accountable plan. That means that that should be part of your employee handbook. You should have information about how do you handle reimbursable expenses to that employee. So you need clarity on what you would reimburse, right? Would it be mileage? Are you going to reimburse them for tolls and whatnot? And make sure, I mean, obviously for mileage, you can't actually collect receipts, but if they are going to claim parking and tolls, make sure that you're getting some type of an expense report. That's really what an accountability plan is. It's like an expense report. So we've all heard this in the big corporate sector. That's how employees get reimbursed for their expenses. This would be no different. Just because you're a small business, whether it's yourself or your staff on payroll, make sure that you're reimbursing the employee. Even if you're the owner, if you are on payroll, you are an employee of the organization. Pay it out of your personal funds and get reimbursed by the business, okay? And when
So if we can reiterate real quick. So you said they all need an accountable plan.
Yes, an accountable plan. If you have staff or you yourself, the business owner, are on payroll, which means you are an employee of the company, there are situations where the business owner is an employee. For example, S corps. Any business that files as S corp tax status, the owner should be on payroll themselves. And at that point, you're an employee. So go ahead and submit a monthly expense report to get reimbursed for what you are using your vehicle for. So your mileage, right? You want to submit that in. And any tolls and parking that were related to that business trip in that case. The other method that I was explaining was you're either a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, then you get to document all of this here that's on the screen for tax purposes. But if you are an employee, this doesn't pertain to you. Then you submit an expense report to your business and have your business reimburse you for the mileage you drove and any tolls and parking that you incurred as a result of that business trip. So I hope I have not confused everybody. I like what Dr. Peters just said. So to reiterate, this little screen here with the calculations, this is more so if the owners are not employees. This does not pertain to anyone who's an employee of the business. Okay, this would be like the partners and or if you're a sole owner, this would be what you would need to track so that you can present that to your tax professional. They can get you the best deduction that works for you, okay? But if you're an employee of the business, you should be submitting an accountable plan, again, an expense report, but that information, you want it to be uniform across the board, and it's important. And I highly advise that that should be part of the employee handbook so that there's no confusion, you know, no doubt about what that person, if you're asking an employee to use a personal vehicle, they should know up front, you know, what their reimbursement is going to be. And in that case, most of the time, the business is reimbursing just mileage based on that rate, by the way. So you're collecting an expense report that details where they drove, right? So how you figured out that mileage in money equivalent, right? Using that tax year's rate. And also you'd probably want to reimburse them for tolls and parking because they went to XYZ location for a business reason, okay? But I also wanted to touch, because I don't know how we're doing on time. I wanted to touch on, I'm pretty sure that somebody's is out there wondering, well, what if I want to buy a vehicle that I want to use only for business reason? Okay, that is probably the only scenario that would save you from tracking mileage. However, when a lot of us are brand new business owners, the likelihood that we're going to get approved for a business automobile loan it's not very likely, right? Because you don't have enough credit. Your business is very new. In that case, I would say really discuss this with your banker, because if you have an LLC, this is where it gets a little bit legal. Where I touch on the legal aspect. If you have an LLC, it is for legal reasons, consult a lawyer so that they can tell you what you would need for that vehicle so that it's protected under your LLC, okay? So if the loan is under your personal name, then what can that do liability wise, right? So for example, talk to an insurance agent. Can you put the insurance in the company's name, right? And then register the vehicle in the business name. I'm sorry, did I say that? The insurance and the registration, the tags, you will want that in the business name. It's going to be more expensive. It's usually a higher cost versus if you get plates and tags for a personal vehicle versus a commercial vehicle, right? So this can vary by county or different areas. So I'm not going to get into the details of that because that's something that needs to be looked into, right? And like I said, if the loan is going to be under your name, but it's going to be paid, the loan payments are going to be made out of the business account. Well, what if you have a corporation entity, right? What if you have an LLC or you're incorporated, like you say INC in your business, right? Well, you want to know because this vehicle should not be in your name, right? So it's important to talk to your banker to see if you can get the loan in the business name, but maybe have it secured by you. Maybe have the loan secured by you because you're such a new business that you don't have business credit yet, right? So it's important to discuss with a banker. Insurance wise, talk to an insurance agent. If it's your personal vehicle and you don't insure it for commercial reasons and you have a tag, like you have your logo all over the place, how could you potentially get a car accident and that person wants to sue your company, right? So talk to your insurance agent, talk to a lawyer, and talk to a banker. When it comes to making a decision, that's a large investment, investing in a vehicle. And depending on the type of business, it could be a regular vehicle, it could be a van, it could be a truck. It depends what your business is. Are you doing landscaping? Are you making deliveries where you need a van? Do you prefer a pickup truck because you're doing landscaping? So we're looking at different things here. And in terms of that, that's why I wanted to bring this up, because that is the other scenario. Now, if the vehicle belongs to the business, you don't have to do all that I was talking about, tracking the mileage, but instead, all costs associated to the vehicle would come out of your business bank account because the vehicle belongs to the business in that case, right? So the loan payments, the interest on the loan, every time the vehicle needs a repair or whatnot. So that would just be part of your regular operating costs, right? And also the loan, then it's acceptable to pay the loan out of the business funds because at that point, the vehicle belongs to the business, right? So I know this was a lot. Different scenarios.
Let's see as we end here. I know we wanted to keep it around 30 minutes because everyone's busy and we want to make sure.
I honestly have nothing else to share unless there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do you mind stop sharing your screen now? Yeah, let's see if we have any questions. Feel free to put it in the chat or on mute. We are family here, so whatever works best for you. But I know something that stuck out to me more than anything. I've heard it in the past, but not recently, which was about the accountable plan for employees, because we forget that. Even if you have one employee, that still needs to be used.
Or even if you're the employee, because it's becoming very popular where business owners are filing for S-Corp tax status. And when you do that, you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. That is the terminology the IRS has out there. And then you are essentially an employee of the company. So go ahead and submit that expense report every month to get reimbursed for the use of your vehicle, of your personal vehicle. And so you're right. An accountable plan is just one that many people forget. It's very important.
So I'm calling names now. Brianna, Tanya, Maureen. I think I said them all right. Any other questions for Joanna before we sign off? Any burning questions you have? And of course, if you have questions, but after we get off the call, you can always feel free to send Ms. Joanna information. I see it's there in the chat, or you can also send us questions too, and I'll include our information in the chat.
Yes, yes. Sounds like everybody is quiet.
Hey, Lorna. This is Tanya.
Hi.
Hey, I don't have any questions. I appreciate everything that's been provided because that's something that I did not know, just in reference to tracking everything that you do with your personal vehicle in order to make sure that business needs are met. Of course, I do have my own boutique, so I do a lot of delivering when it's somebody that's local. And even when it comes to mailing the stuff, of course, I'm going to and from the post. Okay, I see you shaking your head. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear in those particular areas. Have never known to put in gas or, the upkeep of my vehicle. I definitely am looking forward to getting one specifically for the business, but whether it's the business or the nonprofit, I've just been using mine personally for a while. Now, let me ask you this. I do have this question. I know this is for the small business, so is that something that we would do with the nonprofit as well, too?
That I am not sure.
Okay,
I'm
that's
not
okay.
100% sure how that would fit for nonprofits. That is happens to be a sector that I don't work with.
Okay,
But if you do have whoever does the taxes for the nonprofit, it'd be probably best to ask them.
okay.
Um,
That's good. No, that's
and-
perfectly fine.
but the bottom line be in terms of asking is always having the documentation first, right?
Right.
Like documenting it just in case, so when you get around to asking someone. And for you, I know you mentioned in the chat, is this your first year? Like, is 2021 your first year, or was 2020 your first year?
No, for the boutique, for my small business, 2021 is my first year.
Okay.
So I
So
just
I
started the
did want to-
boutique.
Sorry, I wanted to mention that I know I mentioned January 1st, but if you're gonna start tracking as of today, April 19th, then go
Mhm.
ahead and document that you took a picture of the odometer, you're starting your tracking today. If
Okay.
if you cannot remember back to January 1st, what your mileage, you at least track the miles anyway, because if you made a delivery, you probably have
Mhm.
records of who you delivered to.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
go ahead and track that. But in terms of, since this is your first year and you can't go back in time and figure out what your mileage was at the beginning of the year,
Mhm.
start and take a picture of the odometer today. But just make a note that that the picture was as of today. But as I
Okay.
mentioned, for the most part, for most people, just the mileage, the flat mileage rate is more favorable. So definitely trips to the post office to mail merchandise for your boutique, like you mentioned, deliveries that you're making as well. Absolutely.
Okay. That
Mhm.
helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Let's see. Someone said thank you. No further questions. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Next week, we will be back with Miss Joanna Linares. And if you don't mind, tell us what you will be talking about next week.
Oh, wow. I believe in my list, I mentioned we're going to talk about setting up your books, which we
Yes.
kind of touched on the first session, because just for those who were getting ready for taxes, we did start discussing the profit and loss. But with this, I'll approach it a little bit different. So whether you have bought an accounting software yet or not, I'll approach it from that angle. Just discuss, how you want to start setting it up.
Okay, one more question. Am I able to receive the Zoom of the first session? Oh, yes, we can send that to you too, Tanya. Yep, we will.
I think that was the one we streamed the whole thing live.
You're
So
right.
it should be on Facebook as well.
You're
It
right.
should be in the Facebook
So
group.
the second one we can send you because we didn't stream it live, but you're right, the first one we did it fully live on our Facebook page, Tanya.
Yeah, the first one was just a quick guide of, if you're getting ready for taxes, I showed a couple of different tax forms for the different type of entities and how you can quickly gather information. But with setup, we'll touch on that again, just a little bit more thoroughly. It's a little bit more thorough.
Yes, Maureen, we will send it to you, and Brianna will also send it to you. So we'll send all the most recent ones we've done. And of course, if you're unable to attend the upcoming ones, if you still register, we will make sure we get that information recorded out to you. But thank you all for joining us today. Ms. Linares, thank you for your time. Again, she's a bookkeeper. She owns her own business, Enumerista. And thank you, everyone. Have a great Monday. If you have any questions for us, we are here for you in 2021 and beyond. Have a good day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.